What's happening, guys? Cooper Carter here for G66, and on this week's Fractal Friday, I'm going to run you through some of my favorite new features from firmware version 4.01 for the FM9, including probably the most requested feature for the FM9 that has finally been implemented. I don't usually do videos on beta firmware. There are plenty of guys who cover the betas, so I usually wait until the firmware is mature to really dig into the features. But for this new public beta 2 for firmware version 4.01, it was just too exciting not to cover. I did mention in the intro that probably the #1 most requested feature for the FM9 has finally been implemented. I'm gonna show you guys that at the very end. But first, let's get into a couple of the other really exciting new additions here with this firmware. First off, we do have new amp types and new drive types. You guys heard the 59 bass guy reissue jumped in the intro, and this is just a phenomenal amp. It really cleans up nicely. And when you crank it up, it's just snarly as it can be. This firmware also brings us 2 new drive types, the Bosom Boost based on the Friedman Buxom Boost, which really surprised me. This is a perfect example of a pedal that I'm not familiar with in the real world, and now I'm very interested in this pedal. It's a beautiful clean boost that works really well actually with this new amp type. And then we also get the OD1 based on, of course, the absolutely legendary Boss OD1. Also new in this firmware, a feature from the Axe-Fx 3 that originally was not in the FM9 but has been integrated, the input dynamics parameter in the amplifier block. This is one of those Fractal specific features that is an incredibly powerful tool that you wouldn't have in the real world on a physical amplifier, but because we are in Fractal land, it allows you to really shape the character of the amp. Increasing the input dynamics parameter will expand your sound. It's going to add punch, it's going to add crunch, it's going to make it more dynamic. It's increasing the input dynamics. And then decreasing this parameter is going to compress your signal. It's going to bring the dynamics down. It's going to smooth things out. You might want to use this on leads, for example. Again, this is one of those really surgical tools that is available to you here in Fractal World, and with so many of these tools, A dab will do you. A little bit in either direction is really going to change not only the sound of your tone, but primarily the feel, how the amplifier feels under your fingers. We also get a whole host of additions and updates to the compressor block. I've always been a huge fan of the optical compressor, and it's been updated and is even better. And you heard in the intro an absolutely sick amount of sustain on my lead tone. That's coming from the new optical sustainer type. A little shout out to the Studio FF compressor as well. This one's been updated, so you can now use it on all sorts of different tones, including just on an entire mix. The FM9 really is like a piece of studio rack gear now. And finally, two very often requested usability additions. First, we now have the ability under the setup menu in global settings to select a startup preset for the FM9. Historically, Fractal audio units have always pulled up the last used preset when they boot up. So if you turn off your unit and you're using preset 300, when you turn it back on, it's going to be at 300. We still have the ability to have the last used preset come up, but we can also now select from any of the 512 presets in the unit to appear when we boot up. So if you'd always like your unit to boot up on number 1, for example, even if you turn it off on number 300, you now have that ability. And last, but certainly far from least, by far the most requested feature that I have gotten requests for the FM9, we now have a large format display that shows the preset name and your scene names in a much more visible and easily readable way. Now, you may know my good friend Joe Bithorn, the amazing player from the Beatles tribute band Rain, from his Fractal Friday tone tour that I did last year. He had a really unique solution to the smaller display on the FM9, but he can now thankfully get rid of his magnifying glass because we can now make the display on the FM9 much larger. To pull up the larger display, simply twist the B knob one click to the right. You can use the nav buttons to select scenes and the large value wheel to change presets, but you haven't actually changed a preset until you hit enter. So you can scroll through your presets, find the one you want, and then change to it instantly. So there's a quick overview. If you guys enjoyed this video, please do make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to G66's channel, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see on a future Fractal Friday. And as always, if you guys want to get the absolute most out of your Fractal Audio Systems unit, whether that's the FX3, the FM9, or the FM3, make sure to visit classes.coopercarter.com for my complete Fractal Audio Masterclass series. For all things Fractal Audio, keep it right here on G66, and I will see you guys next week on Fractal Friday.